Ryan here with Prudential Pest Solutions, and we are looking at a basketball-sized bald-faced hornet's nest that we are going to treat and remove. And this nest was in a tree, maybe about 8 feet off the ground, and it was right underneath the deck. So obviously these homeowners were just trying to enjoy their deck outside. This is the middle of summer. Well, I should say end of summer. This is about September. And the nest is about as big as it's going to be. We can see the workers hanging out by the main opening there. And we're going to start our treatment process. So the first thing I do, obviously I'm geared up. I'm wearing protective equipment. And I like to inject directly into the main opening. You can see I'm kind of busting out of there. But what happens is that I use a compound called PTPI, which is an aerosol insecticide. And I like to inject it directly into the main opening first. And what happens is it kills them so quickly, it almost creates like a dam of dead bodies. And then what I do is I pierce into the side of the nest and apply the same product. And what happens is that aerosol will permeate that whole void, or that whole nest rather, and it's going to kill them all off. And I put a tarp underneath here because not only did I want to show you the dead hornets that are falling out, but as we go to remove this nest, all that larva that's in there, and I'm going to show a close-up of the larva and what the interior of the nest looks like here a little bit later in the video, but what happens is that larva will fall out of the nest, and it creates a heck of a mess. And they had nice check decking down, so, part of our treatments, obviously, we're professional, so we're going to make sure that we're not going to have to cause the homeowner to do any kind of cleaning. And we can see here, the way they build this nest, they build it directly around a pretty stout branch. And that way things like, strong wind and rain isn't just going to knock it down, but you can see the leaves and the, other branches kind of coming through the nest, which I always think is kind of neat. And if you're curious how they make their nests and how they actually use that or get that outer coating of the nest, that outer covering over the nest, is that they'll chew at wood. And what happens a lot of times is you'll see them chewing at like a fence post or deck. So you might find them just kind of chewing at stuff. And what they're doing is they're making that wood into a pulp, and then they're using that to make their nest. We can see the larvae in there still moving around. So most of the workers are dead, or I should say all the workers that were inside of the nest are now dead. But we're still going to have some flying around the outside because these workers were already out of the nest. And as they come back to their home, they're like, hey, what the heck's going on here? So they're kind of just circling around there. So what I'm going to do is after we remove the nest, I have a backpack sprayer, and we're going to kind of just treat that area around there just to any hornets that are going to land there are going to die. Now, if we didn't spray at the end, would those hornets be able to rebuild the nest? The answer is no. All right, number one, we're too late in the season, and two, none of them are queens. So they're not going to be able to rebuild the nest, but because this is right next to a deck, I want to expedite the process of them being treated. So any stragglers, we're just going to treat that area. As soon as they contact the underside of that branch, they're going to die. And I know I said this in other videos, but it always amazes me that all those stragglers that are still flying around up there, they're not following the nest that I have just taken down. They're still going up to that branch up there, and I always find that interesting. So we're going to open up the nest here, and we can see a bunch of dead ones on the ground. So all that white that we see in the comb there, that is all the brood, or the larval and younger stages of the hornets. So what happens is the queen lays an egg. That egg turns into a larva, they cap it, and then it transforms into a hornet, which will emerge and keep causing problems. So at the very end of the year, this is fall or winter, you're not going to see any brood cells in there because any larva that was in there is already going to hatch out and be done for the year. So if you find a nest like this in the wintertime, in the northern states, I should say, and we're in Pennsylvania, in the northern states, you're not going to see any activity in there because they're all dead for the winter. But in this case, we still see a lot of larvae in there, which means this nest would have continued to grow, and it was still active for this season. So it was a good thing that we were able to come out here and treat this. And we can see a fake hawk hanging from the tree behind me there. They had some bird issues too, which, by the way, we also handle bird issues, but that's not why we were there. So we got the nest down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my sprayer, and we're going to spray up into the tree where the nest used to be. And again, this isn't completely necessary, but again, it expedites the process of killing off any of the stragglers that are there. And when you read online, you'll read online that people say, hey, you should treat these before dawn or at night. And that the reason behind that is because that's when all the workers will be in the nest. Now, as a professional pest control company, I can't schedule every hornet and yellow jacket job for the middle of the night. And also, it's not really safe to do that. So we're going to treat and kill off the whole nest, but then we're going to expedite the process, and there's not going to be that many stragglers out there anyway. So we can see some of the larvae still moving around. And some good lookup of the bald-faced hornets. So bald-faced hornets are the ones that are going to make these big football to basketball sized nests. They're going to hang them in trees. They may put them on the outside of a house or structure, but these are not going to be the kind that you find inside of an attic or inside of a wall. They're large predatory wasps. Their sting hurts quite a bit, and they can sting multiple times. So again, wearing protective equipment is always a good idea. And I'm just going to pull one larva out. And we can see that one's already starting to take the shape of a hornet. So it's no longer just a worm-looking guy. We can see it's translucent. It doesn't have its color yet, but we can see the legs and the body. And I always think it's kind of neat to dig through these nests and see what we get. So, if you have a hornet issue, I would say that this is not a DIY homeowner type job where you can just go to the Lowe's or Home Depot and buy some Raid and conquer this yourself. So if you have a hornet issue, time to call the pros at Prudential Pest Solutions.